What's the creepiest thing you have even witnessed? Driving on the interstate late at night, road was decently foggy, so visibility was somewhat reduced. In this distance, there was a light waving back and forth through the fog in the middle of the road, slowly getting more pronounced as I got closer. I got close enough to then see that it was a guy waving his phone flashlight to alert oncoming traffic. Right in the area past him was two cars that had just crashed, and bodies all over the road. No first responders there yet, or anything. Just carnage, and a man flashing a light. There is something surreal and extremely creepy about coming up on an accident just after it occurs, but before anyone has done anything to help. If you see it happen, or even hear it before you see it, your brain is prepared for what you might see. But just rounding a bend on a country road and seeing twisted metal and broken glass and bodies laying on asphalt with absolutely no warning? So creepy. My parents had something sort of like this happen, but instead of an accident, it was a large couch that had fallen off the back of a truck and crosses the whole road, blocking both directions. This was back in the 70s, so if someone had hit it, they probably wouldn't have been wearing a seatbelt and gone through the windshield. When I was about 6 or 7, I woke up in the middle of the night to a faint sound of what seemed like someone stacking plates in the kitchen every couple of minutes, with the location of my bedroom door giving me a direct view of the kitchen entrance and part of the kitchen. I opened it and peeked my head to see what was going on. To this day, I swear I remember just seeing some old woman, sunken eyes, gaping mouth, completely wide open, head turned almost 90 degrees, just staring at me, not even moving. What's even more frightening is the sound suddenly stopping as I did this. While I'm sure it could have been my eyes struggling to adjust and merely shapes, the longer my eyes adjusted, the more vivid this person became. I just remember staring right back, not moving, from what felt like several minutes. I decided to make a break for my parents' bedroom, which was across from my bedroom. I told them what happened, and they checked and confirmed nothing was there. Fortunately, we were scheduled for an early flight to visit family, so everyone decided to get up. I'm sure it could have just been the young mind playing tricks. Nevertheless, I'll never forget that face. I had a similar experience, though my apparition wasn't so well defined. I was staying at my sister's apartment, low-income housing and old, laying in bed waiting for my boyfriend to join me. There was enough light through the window to see what I thought were the curtains billowing into the room, except the window wasn't open, and there were no fans in the room. So then I thought maybe my boyfriend had hung a light-colored hoodie on the closet door. It had the general shape of a hoodie, the head part, shoulders, torso, except it would have been too big for my BF if it had been a hoodie, was far too long, almost reached the floor, and the shape was more like someone wearing a hoodie with the hood pulled down over their face. The shoulders were filled out, not hanging limp. Then I realized I could see the closet door through the shape. I knew my boyfriend didn't own a gal's hoodie. I sat there staring for at least 5 minutes trying to puzzle it out. What was this translucent white robe-shaped thing gently swaying at the foot of my bed? Before I finally got spooked and hid beneath the blankets, when I peeked out, it was gone. I didn't tell anyone about it because I didn't know how to explain. Checked the closet area in the morning, and there were no clothes hanging outside or anything that would have looked like that. I'm generally a skeptic when it comes to ghosts and spooky shit, but occasionally, I'll remember that experience and doubt my own doubt. My house is on the side of a highway and I have windows facing the highway. It was late at night, I couldn't sleep, so I decided to tire myself out by jumping rope. Halfway through my session, I took a glance outside and saw a man standing on the closest side of the highway, staring at me under the lamppost. It felt as if it was something out of a horror movie. Once I saw his creepy silhouette, I immediately just ducked to the ground, and when I looked up, he was gone. To me now it's a funny situation, as he probably was just some homeless man confused as to why someone was jump roping at like 12 a.m., and when I fell down, he probably bolted. This is a bit of a different take on creepy. When I was about 12, I accidentally went off piste on a ski run and got a bit lost. I found myself on a flat expanse. I skied in the direction of a massive board that I assumed was a sign, offering directions, but the lettering was on the other side. When I got around to face it, it was a danger sign warning people not to go near the lake due to thin ice. This is Australia, it's not cold enough to produce reliable ice. I realized I could have simply disappeared and perhaps no one would ever have found out what happened to me. I was skiing in an area where the cliffs are protected with net fences to keep skiers from slipping off. I took a sharp turn too fast and felt that I will smash into it. To reduce speed, I leaned in and broke as hard as I could. This made me lean so low in the turn that I slipped under the fence. My heart just stopped, and I waited for the stomach-lifting drop, but it never came. I just kept on sliding. Apparently, they also put a fence up at the flat area. I was sure I was gone. I hit the netting with the toe of my snowboard and flipped over it when I got clipped by a skier. Had enough time to flap my arms while falling backwards and think, oh shit, this is gonna hurt. Then fell into a patch of snow. When I got up, I realized I hit the only patch of snow that was about 2 meters wide and 10 meters lengthways, and there were jaggy rocks on both sides. I shit myself after realizing how close I came to breaking my back. It was a 30-yard cliff drop. Man, I love skiing, but there have been too many times where gravity and the difficult to control nature of snow in mountains caught up with me. At one point, I started sliding towards a cliff that was closed off, and then I couldn't stop myself for a second. I finally dug my feet in to stop, but any more momentum, and that would have been it. Couple that with just how easy it is to hit your head. I used to ski double blacks drunk and high without a helmet. I even ate shit going fast as I lucked out and was fine. This past year I was going down a blue and lost my balance. Absolutely slammed my head into the ground. It rang my bell even with a helmet. Without it, and they would have been airlifting me off the mountain. I love it, but man, talk about an activity designed to destroy tendons, dislocate limbs, and cause catastrophic head injuries. Went to bed in a hotel room with the balcony door open because it was hot. Had a bad dream of a guy in a red checked shirt peering into the room, entering, and eating an ice cream at the end of the bed. When I woke up, I discovered a half-melted banana-colored ice cream between the bed and the wall. I have a really hard time falling asleep. Sometimes I'll wake up and be in that sleep-awake state, but I'm still somewhat able to form semi-conscious thoughts, sometimes about my surroundings at the time. Point is, there is a possibility this dream you had came from a moment you gained semi-consciousness and actually saw this guy, and your mind basically convinced you it was a dream because you weren't fully awake. I once saw a weirdo jump roping in the dark in their house at midnight when I was on my way home drunk from the bar. Or was I just drunk? Being a kid witnessing my dad going through alcohol withdrawals, he would hold on long conversations by himself as if he was talking to someone on the phone, and he would see things that weren't there. He then took my bike for a ride and fell over and had a seizure. I was too scared to do anything, but someone came to help and he went to the hospital for a week. I remember seeing my mom watching a hockey game on the wall next to her bed one night. Was too young to realize what was going on at the time. Had a couple of seizures the next day. Pretty ducked up what alcohol withdrawal will do. I went to rehab a few years back for my addiction to prescription pain meds. I'll never forget some of the things I saw, and I couldn't believe the effects of alcohol withdrawals. There was a woman there that had been withdrawing for over 2 weeks, and she was still hallucinating from it, from alcohol, scratching her skin off, screaming about spiders, from alcohol. The only withdrawal that can actually kill the person, from my understanding. Crazy. I was the sole witness to a murder. I've told this story before. I was in a Jeep with the top down, waiting for 2 guys on the sidewalk to stop arguing. One guy pulls a shank out of his sock and stuffs it, stiff-armed, into the other guy's eye. The crunch was sickening. He took off. I ran up, blood was spurting out of the dude's face onto the sidewalk in spurts. Long story short, dead by the time the ambulance showed up. I was going to testify in court, but the other dude pled guilty and got 20-ish years, I believe. It was a long time ago. Not long enough for me to forget that sound, though. For real. I just got home from work and I suddenly heard gunshots. My roommate and I hit the floor. As soon as it cleared, we checked outside. Everyone that was outdoors left. There was a woman I recognized from the block. There was blood everywhere. We went up to her to find out that she was shot in the head. Blood and brain matter was everywhere. She wasn't the intended target. She was getting ice cream for her son. Totally changed me. We were leaving St. Louis about a month ago. It was around 9 p.m. and we were on the highway. GPS alerted us there was an object on the road. Maybe a minute later, we see a piece of tire and we avoid it. But I just had this gut feeling it wasn't that. Maybe a few minutes after I see something up ahead and can't really tell what it is. As we get closer, I yell at my husband to get over. Thank God there wasn't a car in the other lane, because it was a car that had wrecked sitting horizontal in the lane we were driving in, and all the lights were turned off. We could have seriously died if we had crashed into it driving 70 miles per hour. When I was a kid in New York City, me and my mom used to take the train or bus whenever we traveled. You can imagine the weird shit I've encountered during my childhood, but one event really sticks out to me. This homeless woman, who appeared to be on the influence of some sort of hard drug, stepped onto the train I was on. She started yelling about random shit as crackheads would be known to do from time to time, so it was nothing too worrying. But then she stopped and started laughing directly at me. Then, while maintaining eye contact, she urinated over herself and said something along the lines of, "Those dreams are never gonna stop." I had been suffering from a recurring nightmare for years to that point and would wake up crying, sometimes without even realizing it. It scared the living shit out of me. It was probably a lucky guess, but man, did that shit stick with me. The nightmares did stop eventually though, so she can go duck herself. Something that happened to me. When I was around 9-ish, I answered the landline phone in our house. The man knew me by name, said he knew my mom, tried to chat with me. I didn't know him and didn't like talking to adults, so I said, "Let me get my mom," and ran to get her. She answered the phone and the man had hung up. A few weeks later, a girl in the grade ahead of me went missing. She'd apparently told her friends that a man contacted her, said he was a friend of her mom's, and was going to pick her up after school to pick a present out for her mom as a surprise. She was kidnapped and murdered. They found her body months later, but never caught the man. This was in the early 90s. Turns out quite a few young girls had gotten the same phone call I had. He seems to have been choosing his victim. The FBI came to my house to ask me questions about that phone call. It still haunts me 30 years later. Still hoping they catch the guy. Absolutely heartbreaking. I've worked in drug and alcohol treatment for just over 10 years. I've been a tech the whole time, so I've done hundreds of admissions. I was training a new tech on admissions one day, and this person came in high out of their mind on meth, and I was training a new tech. The admit was kind of there, then not there, as they hadn't slept for a few days. The admit goes out for a second in their chair and starts snoring a bit, so we do some computer charting. The admit pops up suddenly and looks the new tech dead in the eye and screams at her that your husband wasn't your fault. The tech just stood there frozen. Admit then takes a step towards tech. "You need to understand it wasn't your fault," in a threatening manner. Admit's fists were clenched. I thought she was going to hit our tech. So I said calmly, "You need to sit down." And Admit looked at, slammed her fist on the table, and said it was not your fault, as Admit sat down and laid head on the table. It was ducking intense. The tech left, and I called in another tech to take the client to the nurse. When I went to my coworker, she was bawling her eyes out. I knew her kind of from somewhere that a lot of people that work in treatment meet up, but I didn't know her well. Her boyfriend had died intentionally, so she blamed it on herself. It was one of the most intense things I'd seen. After she composed herself, we went back and finished the search and paperwork. Client stated she had no recollection of event or most of Admit later, which is super common. When I was younger, 11, maybe 12, I moved into a new house. My room had a big closet and access to the attic. I was a scared little kid and was worried a monster lived up there. One night I woke up in the middle of the night to see my closet door slowly opening. I didn't move and then yelled for my parents. Found out if the door isn't properly closed, it will open itself. Still have never been as scared as I was in the moment. A large black van with tinted windows following me and the group of other kids I was with, including my little sister. It was winter. I think a no-bus day in Canada, so needless to say, it was snowy. Me and some other kids, including my sister, at our babysitter's, still wanted to go on a walk, so we put on all our snow stuff and began walking. Well, at one point, my sister points out a black van slowly driving a bit behind us. I think we were a group of 5 or 6, and most of us were around 10 years old, save for my sister, who would have been around 7. We just assumed they were driving slow because of the road, and looking for a house, maybe, but we still ran best. Anyone who has tried to run in full winter gear knows how hard it is. We could until we couldn't see the van anymore, and we continue walking. A minute later, my sister points out the van again, and it's pretty much the exact distance behind us that it was before we ran. At this point, we were a little weirded out, but thought we were just walking slow, so it caught up. So we ran again, further this time, and kept looking back. I think I remember looking back and seeing nothing, and looking back a few seconds later to see the van was there again. At this point, we were all freaked out, and I remember just having a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach seeing it again. We all began running like our lives depended on it, because in our minds, they did. My sister was the slowest, and one of the larger and older boys had to pull her along so she didn't get left behind. I remember looking back and seeing the van speeding up a bit, still at a distance, but clearly trying to keep up with us. It felt like we were running for ages, but we finally reached the babysitter's house, ran up to the stairs, slammed the door shut, and caught our breath. We told her what had happened, but I don't think she believed us. I remember me and another girl who was in the group saw the same van drive by the window at least once. I think it was twice though. I don't know. It might have been nothing that our brains twisted into something, but about a decade later, I still can't shake the feeling that the van was bad news, and that we were all lucky it was noticed in time. Not a spooky ghost story, but the creepiest thing I've ever seen was working my college job. I look a lot younger than my age in general. A 50-year-old man was intently set on talking to me and getting up real close to me while he did so. That alone made me incredibly uncomfortable. Then he asked, "By the way, how old are you?" When I said 24, he looked at me with an absolutely disgusted look on his face and said, "Oh, I thought you were way younger than that." To this day, I'm creeped out by that single comment. When I was around that age, a random guy at the bus station asked for my number and if I wanted to hang out with him. I said no, and he said, "We can just be friends. How old are you?" And I'm like 25. And he was like, "What? I thought you were like 15. What the duck?" So I asked, why is he trying to hit on someone he thinks is 15? And his answer was, "Well, you said you're 25, so it's fine." Was staying at my sister's when I was 14 and had a horrible nightmare about being strangled by the devil. I could only see his face smiling at me and feel a crushing sensation on my throat. I told him to duck off and swung a punch, and then I woke up. I looked over and it was about 1 a.m. The next morning, my sister was complaining that she had a really horrible nightmare that the devil was strangling her. I asked her what time this happened, and she said around 1 o'clock. We were having our house renovated room by room. When it was my bedroom's turn, I spent a few weeks or so sleeping in the attic. Every night up there, I had sleep paralysis and kept seeing a shadowy male figure standing in one corner. I didn't bother saying anything about it. When my sister's room got renovated, she went to sleep in the attic. After a few days, she complained to me that she'd been having sleep paralysis there and kept seeing a shadowy male figure standing in one corner. Our neighbors had a little disagreement. He evidently hit her a few too many times, and she decided to knife him in the chest while he slept. She dragged his body to the closet, then she walked to the kitchen and turned the burner on high while accidentally knocking over some paper towels or something. Then she remembers that she is out of cigarettes and takes a stroll to the store. The heat from the blaze nearly melted our vinyl siding. Later, we watched crime scene techs use a shovel to pry him from the door of what used to be the closet. Imagine burnt chicken stuck to a frying pan and having to get under it with your spatula. It was a lot for one evening. I feel like that isn't so much creepy as much as utterly ducking terrifying. Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, then make sure you like and subscribe. Also, feel free to comment any video idea you would like us to cover next.